Welcome to the Low Demand Parenting Podcast, where we drop the pressure, find the joy, and thrive, even when it feels like life is stuck on level 12 hard. I'm Amanda Diekman, author, autistic adult, and mom of 3. I'm not here as an expert, but a fellow traveler. Together, we're learning how to live more gently, authentically, and vibrantly in this wild parenting life. In today's episode, I got to sit down and talk to the amazing Amelia Nagoski, author of the New York Times bestselling book Burnout with her sister and late diagnosed autistic adult. We originally recorded this interview as a part of the Low Demand Parenting Summit in 2024, and it is really an honor to bring you this conversation on the podcast. We're talking all about burnout, and so I wanted to mention something coming up that I'm really excited to offer. If you are a professional who needs to know more about burnout so that you can serve your clients, your patients, anybody that you serve, whether they're an adult or a child that you suspect might be at risk of going into burnout, I am offering a live workshop on burnout explicitly for professionals. It'll be held on Thursday, June 12th from 4 to 5:30 Eastern Time in the United States. You can join in for only $27. If you're a parent, I'd love to have you. Just know that it is going to be geared for professionals, but man, you need to know this information too. Or if you want to buy this and gift it to one of the professionals in your life, we have that all set up for you online. So information is in the show notes. You can also go to my website at amandadiekman.com and you'll see the information right on the main page. Enjoy this conversation with Amelia Nagoski. I have Amelia Nagoski with me to talk about autistic burnout. Hi, Amelia.
Hi.
We are pretty excited about this conversation, which is really a sign that it's a special interest because not very many people love talking about burnout. But 2 of them in the world are sharing a screen currently. So can you tell me a little bit about what led you to write this book with your sister and about your burnout journey?
Yeah, we wrote Burnout because it's the book I needed when I was pursuing my Doctorate of Musical Arts in conducting at a state land grant institution. So the thing is, I ended up in the hospital in my 3rd year with pain. I thought I was going to die. Ended up in the emergency room. Doctors couldn't find anything wrong with me except that my white cell count was off the charts. And they were like, oh, it's just stress and you need to relax. And I'm like, I am a doctoral student working 3 part-time jobs and stepmother to 3 teenagers. I'm commuting 65 miles each way to my teaching assistantship at the university and all my classes. Relaxation is not in the cards for me. And the idea of just stress was so confusing. What is stress actually? Luckily, my identical twin sister is Emily Nagoski, PhD. So when I was in the hospital, she came down with just stacks of peer-reviewed research on the impact of stress on your physical health. And I was astonished. She assumed that I knew all this because she assumes everybody knows the things that she knows and is surprised to learn when people don't. What I learned in that process of trying to recover from my own stress-induced hospitalization was stuff that I was like, I cannot be the only one who doesn't know this and needs to be told. So we wrote that book.
Gorgeous. It's such an authentic reason for putting words into the world. So this is my story and it's our story. At least I think you're out there, my our. And if I create this, can this give you some word for your story?
Yeah,
I
it really
that.
felt like nobody had said this before, that, hey, external social pressures have an impact at an individual level that changes how our bodies work. People keep talking about self-care is the cure for burnout. A, what the hell is self-care? B, I have been trying so hard. I am a diligent student, like a lot of level 1 autistics. I'm smart and I'm good at following rules. I am good at doing what I am told. You tell me what to do, I will get that done. And I did that with both my academic career and with my what I knew about like how to take care of myself. And it wasn't working. And turns out the research says that's not my fault. It's not because I
Mm.
wasn't trying hard enough. Actually, all the trying I was doing was hopeless. There was zero chance that it would actually impact the disconnect between who I actually am and what I'm actually capable of and what the world says I should be. And that chasm is where burnout happens.
Yes. And it is that chasm that this parenting approach that I'm trying to bring into the world is directly speaking into for our kids. And then it turns out the kind of radical acceptance that our kids need is
Yes.
also exactly what we need. It can be this beautiful flow back and forth of as I care for you, I discover I can care for myself. At the same time, though, many of our kids, many families arrive at low demand or at maybe we could just say seeing the chasm
Hmm.
because things have gotten so hard, because their kid is in burnout and they are quickly heading there themselves, or
Yeah.
they're providing very intensive round the clock care for their kid and taking on more and more
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
So let's step into that space, which is sounds like is
Hmm.
exactly where you were. And it's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so part of the try harder mentality. So
Yep.
what's the
Yeah.
way out if not try harder?
I think the key to the problem is that humans are a herd species, right? We thrive in groups. Jonathan Haidt is a social psychologist who says that humans are 90% chimp, 10% bee. We thrive in a hive, right? We're meant to do great things together. So when our bodies tell us that we need to strive for perfection, that we need to follow the role models that we see online, social media shows us so much more of people's personal lives than we've ever seen before as a species. And we think that we need to conform to that. That is not like some trite, cheap, dumb thing. That is our survival instinct telling us the safest place in the herd is the middle. Because when the lion comes,
Mm.
it's the animals on the fringes. And in society, it's the people on the fringes, the ones who don't conform, who are literally the most at risk for social injustice, all kinds of physical harm. The less you conform to the socially constructed ideal, which is, of course, like the white supremacist, cis heteronormative, exploitative, like capitalist patriarchy, the less you are like that very small ideal. And the thing is, that thing we are being shown as an aspirational ideal is literally a lie. It's a fiction that's made up to sell us things so that we work and strive to meet that aspiration, which is literally unachievable by
Mhm.
anyone. No one lives that life, even the people who show themselves pretending to live that life. That's not a thing. That's not real. And when we instead turn toward our own personal bubble of love and recognize that we have our own smaller herd and that we're in the middle of that herd, we're surrounded by people who value our well-being as much as we value theirs. That those are the people who are going to remind you, no, you don't have to conform to that large socially constructed ideal. This is our ideal, this mess of love that we share together. This is the ideal. You are safe in this herd. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, totally
Okay.
does. I have this small group that we're doing a mastermind, and we went through your book all fall. And one of the best
Cool.
exercises we did was the bubble of love. And
Yeah.
we created it together. We talked about it. We visualized it. We did all kinds of body things to create that sense. And one of the biggest demands that ends up getting dropped in that process is this idea of a good parent for those of us.
Yes.
Like that ended up being this shedding process of all the trappings of good parent that, as
Yep.
you said, are at their core a lie.
They're made up. Yeah.
Yes, they're both made up and reinforced for a reason, which is why I would
Oh, yeah.
call them like, yeah, a lie. It's
Yeah.
not like a
Yeah.
benign
Oh, yeah, fiction. It's a toxic ideal that's meant to exploit you and meant to make you weaker and less powerful and distracted by this aspiration so that you don't actually become your most powerful self so that you cannot create larger scale change, which is what your kids actually need.
I want to get into some of the specifics of autistic burnout. All of
Yes.
these like safety and protective mechanisms
Yeah.
become so much harder to access in burnout.
Yes.
So talk me
Yes.
through how neurodivergent burnout is maybe different than another picture of burnout that we might.
At its essence, the burnout itself is the same. It's the external reasons that the burnout happens and also some of the strategies you use to recover that are a little bit different, but the process is the same. I was not diagnosed with autism until after the book came out. The book is not personal. It's not about me and Emily specifically. It's definitely a science book that says, here's the state of the research right now. And there's a lot of stuff in it that I was like, really? I've been talking about this book for years now. And people love the idea that you can recover from burnout with social connection, 20-second hugs. People love it. And it's in the book because it is evidence based. But I was like, all right, if you say so. And not knowing that I was autistic for like well over 40 years means that I didn't know why I didn't conform. I didn't know.
Mm.
I knew there were differences, but I didn't know what they were or what. I thought maybe it was childhood trauma or like whatever. And I've been in therapy for 20 years and it didn't really solve the issue. And then I was like, oh, you're autistic. But the difference of, as you're saying, like the problems with communications, like why can't I write an email that anyone understands? Why does it take me 45 minutes to write 2 sentences back to my department chair? Why? Why does it take me 40 minutes to just email my therapist to change an appointment? Oh, and feeling terrible about the fact that I'm not the same. And this is a dynamic that will happen at any intersection. People of color, people who have different textures or placements or quantity of hair, people who don't speak English as a native language in America, people who are non Christian in America always feel this friction between who they are and what the world expects. The difference with neurodivergence is that it's invisible. So no one else is going to be able to be like, oh, you are different for this reason. And therefore, I understand that there's a difference between us. So it's less forgiving when you don't conform and therefore more stressful. And then when you go to recover, the things that all the books say work for everybody. So when I discovered that, I actually made a YouTube channel and talked about, like, in each chapter of the book, which things did I put in there because science, and I need to explain how, oh, if you're autistic, this is why it might not feel true. Or if you're autistic, this is why it might feel so much more true than typical people feel. Like there's this process of frustration, that there's a brain's process. The discrepancy reducing increasing feedback loop, we call it the little monitor that monitors your progress toward a goal. And there is no research on this, I believe, but it's clear to me that autistic people have a monitor that is more rigid than other people's monitors. Our flexibility in terms of responding to plans when they change and getting frustrated when things don't go as planned. I have zero tolerance. I have no top, and I feel like that's a common autistic
Mhm.
rigidity thing. This is the chapter that breaks open autistic minds, and you go, oh, I have power to reduce my frustration by changing the expectancy, right? Or
Yes.
reframing a loss. And nobody ever wants to talk about chapter 2, which is the monitor chapter, but chapter 2 was like life changing for me. I don't want to claim that being autistic is a more difficult difference than other kinds of difference, but it is a difference, and it's, I think, on par with a physical disability or all the other intersections we've talked about and all the other ones we haven't talked about. Yeah, so I don't want to claim autism makes it harder than anyone else has it, but it makes it harder than if you were neurotypical, for sure. And in unique ways because of the like invisibility of it, the kind of lack of forgiveness from the people around you, people who like don't believe in autism that it's a thing, people who on the wide scale assume that if you're autistic, you're stupid. So do you tell people and have them treat you the way they assume an autistic person is? Or do you not tell them and have them not understand why you can't have a conversation where both of you understand what the other is saying? Yeah, it's unique. It's unique, it's individual, just like every other intersection. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. And disability and identity and marginalization. And
Yes.
I'm with you. And needing to be included in the intersectionality in a way that we appreciate. Oh, so if you have multiple marginalizations and you're neurodivergent, that is a seriously challenging scenario and one ultra deserving of support and accommodation, which of course, as we see,
Yeah.
that's a thing we're going to need to dream and fight and mobilize into
Yeah.
existence because we're nowhere near there right now.
And the good news is that the process for recovering and preventing burnout is the same as anybody else's, which is that you have to find your own recipe, your own formula of the stuff that works. There are many things that work. None of them work for everyone. All of them work for someone.
I want to get into an aspect of the monitor chapter that I
Yay.
think is a really common challenge for parents, especially because we're talking about autistic burnout for adults and for kids. That
Uh-huh.
this the people who kind of track burnout look at around age 6 as the most common age of the first burnout for an autistic person who is going to end up with chronic burnout for their lifetime.
Wow.
I think there's a couple of important reasons for it. I think that there's things happening biochemically that are really important in why that
Yeah.
happens. And it's a time where external expectations of childhood really lock into place, that you are no
Yeah.
longer given all of this kind of leeway, grace period, this idea that everyone's on their own path and you learn to walk and talk at your own speed. It's like a mass conformity moment for children as they enter the
Yeah.
school system. So we talk a lot about dropping demands in this community, which is really about identifying those expectations that are unrealistic and that the innate goodness and rightness of who we are and where we are is a
Yeah.
mismatch for expectations that either the world has created or that someone that we love is asking of us.
Right.
And that when faced with the discrepancy, the narrative most of us have been given is try harder and meet the expectation, because to do so is wrong on many different levels. And
Yeah.
what we are reframing here is that no, it is actually about saying that is unrealistic or unattainable or not for me. And we
Yeah.
need to release the expectation and ground in
Yeah.
radical acceptance.
Yeah.
But one of the big challenges that comes up is the idea of what I call a fake drop, where you actually do let go of the expectation, but not the
Uh,
underlying belief that it should be done.
yeah.
That
So you
is what
drop
is
it, but you feel
actually good and right.
bad.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. And I'm wondering with that, Shell, are there practices that you in particular have found get at that deeper belief system? How have you gone about that deeper work?
The research that I know of suggests that we cannot, each of us as individuals, we cannot accomplish that. That's not a thing that one person can do. The way to those underlying assumptions and beliefs about shoulds is to be surrounded by other people who agree and can reinforce to you, no, that thing on your to-do list, you didn't put that there. Somebody else put it there. And yeah, you think that somebody else might have known the right thing, but no, like really take it all the way off your to-do list. And that's okay. You need other people to tell you and to help you. About half of autistic people have alexithymia. I don't know if you talk about that in the book, but for anybody who doesn't know, alexithymia is like a clinical inability to sense and communicate your internal experience, thoughts, feelings, bodily processes. Like sometimes I feel pain and I don't know I'm feeling pain until somebody sprays numbing on it. I'm like, oh, the pain is gone. I didn't even know there was pain to begin with. That's a lot of the challenge that I particularly had with recovering from burnout is I don't even notice that I'm suffering and I really genuinely think I'm fine. So A, noticing, B, being able to communicate this feeling that you have to someone else so that they understand it, and then allowing that person to communicate to you in a way that you understand it. that I'm lucky to have Emily in my bubble who can speak with me and I can communicate with her really directly and understand. But it might take time to find people who can do that, people who have these same feelings, is exactly the cure for the thing you're talking about. It just needs to be a little bit every day.
I love
And the
it.
thing is that then it becomes like a thing on your to-do list that you have to accomplish, which is even more stressful. So if just information while we're here, if that's hard for you, it's not your fault. Of course it's hard for
Mm,
you. A, if
mm,
you're neurodivergent. B, if you're a human living in the Western post-industrial world, the world tells us that there is heroism only in individual success, right? The lone
mm,
cowboy in the Western wilds or whatever. That's the ideal, and the idea of connection being like a thing that women do because it's weakness, and only people who are weak need to have a herd to support them. And
mm,
real value comes from someone who can stand on their own. Like, it's a lie. And unlearning that lie is one of the things that you need to like have people around you to convince you that it's not true. And at the
mm,
same time, the rest of the world will be continuing to reinforce that lie. It is an ongoing process, but
mm,
it feels great when you're doing it because it makes you powerful. It makes you
mm,
capable of smashing the patriarchy. Connecting with other people is not weakness, it's where strength comes from. And it is good for you, your soul, and your spirit. No matter how much alone time you need in a day, if you need 23 hours of alone time in a day, that 1 hour of connection with people is so good for you.
You talk about the smashing gives me hope. I'm a
Mm.
smasher. Seeing my kids grow up from their earliest memories with a sense that when something is too hard, we let it go. We don't push through. We don't overcome. We don't fight harder. We say, whoa, too hard. Let's let it go. And it is, as you said, like there's some real delight in that process,
Yeah.
the way it gets woven into daily life and seeing that the story that I was raised with, which is that unless we take every opportunity to push through, we will become
Strive.
lazy
Yep.
and we will dissolve, and that there's this like corruptive negative something inside that if we really let it run the show, that it will take me nowhere good. And then
Yeah.
teaching them, no, that thing inside of you is your truest guide, and the
Yeah.
more you listen to it and the more nuance we give it to speak, the better you will know what it means to be whole. So
Yeah.
that is gives me hope. What gives you hope as you talk about burnout and fight the patriarchy and the name intersection? What gets you a sense that this work matters and that maybe it's working?
I hate the idea of hope. We took a test when we were writing the book because optimism and pessimism tend to be stable personality traits that are with you your whole life and are not super changing. And there's evidence that optimists have significantly increased well being over pessimists. People who believe that the world is essentially good and safe live better lives. Not a surprise, right? Because they're not so stressed out. But the research also says that pessimists perceive the world more accurately. We took a test, and I have the highest pessimism score of anyone in our bubble. Like, I am a deep and profound pessimist. I believe the world is not a good or safe place. I believe that there is chaos and entropy and ruin are inevitable. But that doesn't mean I live without hope. It just means that I live without thinking that there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So for me, it's chapter 3, meaning, which is what you were referencing of making things that matter. Meaning, the research on it is fuzzy and a mess. But basically, what it boils down to is engaging and feeling connected to something. So the idea that, like, my existence, my presence in the world alone changes the world because I am a person, I'm influencing other people, and everything I do, I hope, increases the amount of pleasure and joy and fun, or at least educates the people around me so that they have a new response to things they see in the world. The story that makes this the most true and feels the best, I think, is Moana, because Moana's name
Mm.
means the ocean in the Maori language. And she feels called by the ocean as something larger than herself, but she herself is the call. She is Moana, I am Moana. She is herself. And she says, I will carry you here in my heart. You're inside me. It's like the tide, always falling and rising. And that is the meaning that you carry. It's not always there every moment full. It's like the tide.
Yes. Okay. I'm an Elsa girl. I'm Show Yourself is my primary anthem. That, like, coming as something I say a lot to parents who are struggling in burnout, is no one is coming to save you.
Yeah.
And it's different than the
Yeah.
herd idea. It is saying you get to save yourself. You don't have to wait.
You are already saved because you have the capacity of
Absolutely.
salvation inside you. What I
Or
love about
becoming.
all of those like princess stories, not all of them, but the recent ones, the girl boss princess stories, it's easy to dismiss them in that, oh, this is like a weird pseudo feminism where the girl is like a boy, whatever. The point of the whole hero's journey kind of story arc is that what it's about is turning to face the strange, turning toward difficult things with at least curiosity, at best kindness and compassion, recognizing this is so hard. And I'm not going to force myself into danger, but I'm going to allow myself to go into the unknown.
Thank you, Amelia. I'm super grateful that you took what probably was the hardest time of your life and you brought curiosity and you brought your perfect unknown autistic self to the ball game, and that you brought that vulnerably forward to the world in the book and in the work that you do now. Thank you very much.
I'm glad that my suffering was not in vain. And anything I can do to like tell the world it's not your fault. There's systemic pressures that are changing who you are and how you experience joy and pleasure and wellness, and there's solutions.
If this podcast is speaking to your soul, you can subscribe through wherever you get your own podcast. Even better, if you feel the nudge, head on over to Apple Podcasts in particular and leave us a review. It's such a helpful way for new people to also get to experience what this podcast wants to bring into their lives. I'm Amanda. Remember, it takes great strength to let things go. I'll see you next week.